Welcome to Vestige's video series. In this video, we're going to talk about what a forensic clone is and the process behind it. So what is a clone? A forensic clone is nothing but a specialized image of all the information that's on a media. It goes by several different names. Sometimes you'll hear it as a bit-for-bit clone, a byte-for-byte clone. I've heard reverse image, I've heard mirror image, or simply just a clone. All of those are fairly synonymous from our standpoint as a forensic examiner, but it basically encapsulates the fact that we are going to make a special type of copy of the media and place it on media that we're going to use. This is an important precedent that needs to be set in forensic examinations because we never want to examine information directly on the original media. It's very important. So why create a clone? Well, we're going to create a clone for number one reason is preservation of the evidence. The problem is then in these situations is, although it's unlikely that the case may progress to a court and see the light of day of court, the reality is you never know which ones that's going to be true. And so we need to take special precautions and steps at the very beginning to make sure that we don't taint the evidence, but also collect it in such a way that we can authenticate it down the road and make it admissible from there. So that's the predominant thing that we want to make sure we do. And we're going to talk about how that's done from an admissibility standpoint in the next section of this. Secondly, it is actually, our experience has been that it's actually quicker to make a copy of an entire hard drive or the media when possible versus simply going and collecting the information. It takes longer to select the information that we're going to be after, and oftentimes we're then forced to use the built-in technologies, sometimes over, say, like a USB port or something, which can actually be slower from there. So we found it to actually be a quicker process to go ahead and make the copy a forensic clone when we can. The next thing, another advantage that's a side benefit for it is that we all know that in cases that as the case progresses, new facts are discovered, facts change, there's new information that we might want to explore. In a situation where we're going out and collecting that information prior to or searching it as we're collecting it, if we had to do that, we'd have to go back and interrupt the organization, the business, the individual once again. Instead, if we make a forensic clone, we can simply just turn our attention back to that clone that we've preserved and proceed that way. So huge efficiency savings on that side of things. And then the last piece that's a practical reason is why we want to make a forensic image is that a forensic image is the only way to maintain and capture deleted information. A forensic clone is different than a simple backup that one might perform through the operating system itself. And one of the primary differences of that is that the operating system and the file systems are trained to ignore that information when it's been deleted. Therefore, if you go and you try to make a copy, you're going to necessarily miss that information. Obviously, in a forensic situation, deleted information can be very important, and therefore, proceeding with a clone is going to be your best bet in terms of being able to recover that. So let's look at how we're actually going to make a clone. Now, there are software solutions, there are hardware solutions that will do this. This is going to be an example of a hardware solution. It is just one type. There's all kinds of different companies and all kinds of different types of devices like this. They all work under the same kind of premise, and that premise is that one side of the device is write blocked, meaning that we cannot write to or change any of the information on that device. That would be where the target drive goes, the suspect drive, something that you're trying to investigate. We're going to make a copy of that, so we're going to hook that up to the device. On this side, this will allow us to write our data to a hard drive. And in this case, we use sanitized hard drives, which means that it's a drive that hasn't been used for another case. It's been wiped clean. There's no remnants of other information on there. We're going to go ahead and hook that up, and we're going to proceed by making a copy of this. Now, two important pieces that happen. One is, it is making an exact copy, bit by bit, hence why you'll get that as a name sometimes. It is going to start at the beginning of the media, and it's going to go all the way through to the end of the media and copy that here. There's some error checking that goes on along the way to make sure that it did read the information and write the information there. And then the most important part of this is the creation of a hash. Specifically, in the industry, there's several different ones. Specifically, we're going to talk about the MD5, or the Message Digest Number 5. It's just a version of it. Basically, what I want you to think of is an MD5, or a hash in general, is a black box where we push data through on one side, and out the other side comes a unique fingerprint. Now, that data can be a single sentence, it can be a document, it can be an entire hard drive. Out the other side comes a unique fingerprint. Now, that unique fingerprint is so unique that on an entire hard drive, if inside one particular document a comma changes to a period, we will get a unique fingerprint. It just won't be the same unique fingerprint of what we got initially. All right. So the important part of these devices is as we hook these up and get the process started, as it's reading one of the drives, the target drive or the suspect drive, it is going to create a hash of that. And at the same time as it's pushing the data to the destination drive, it's also going to hash it. At the end of that, if those two hashes match, we can say to a mathematical degree of certainty that we've made an exact replica of those two drives. That then becomes what's known as best evidence. We no longer need to have access to that device, and in fact, we can return that device to the end user. They can continue working on as if nothing ever happened, and they can go back to it. We have best evidence at this point in time, and all of the analysis takes place actually on another forensic copy of that copy from there. So again, maintaining the integrity of the data. The fact that we can show that we've made an exact replica of it, and at any point in time in the future, we can go back and run that hash process over our copy, and those two things will match. We can again say to a mathematical degree of certainty that nothing has changed on that device while it's in our possession. Again, this leads to the ability to authenticate and therefore make this information admissible. It's important to understand again that doing this copy like this is not the same thing as just creating a backup or a copy through the operating system or file system that you have. That this is a specialized process that needs to happen. So let's explore some of the case law and the reasons from a legal standpoint that we might want to pursue this. The seminal case in this matter that talks about the outside counsel's responsibility and individual's responsibility when it's in litigation comes from a case called Zubalake versus UBS Warburg. It was the decision was written by the federal judge Shira Schindlin out of the Southern District of New York. It's happened around the 2003 time frame. There were actually 5 written decisions in it. The one that we're going to focus on, though, is the one where she talks, and I believe it's the third one, where she talks about outside counsel's responsibility in ensuring that a litigation hold is placed on electronic media and what the effective way of doing such is. In that decision, she talks specifically about one of the best ways, the only way really, to preserve information in such a way that makes it admissible is to create forensic clones of those devices. Another case that I'll point you to is Gates versus Bando. It was a case from the mid-1990s. In that situation, the individual that was investigating the wrongdoing sidled up to the device and simply started going through the device. The problem with that is that those actions will change information on a computer. In fact, just turning a computer on and turning it off will make changes to hundreds, if not thousands, of files. And the problem is that a lot of these things keep track of the last time something is done. So if you're specifically looking for an artifact or the last time a particular document was accessed or changed or something along that lines, if you simply sit down and start investigating, you will necessarily be changing some of that information. And as was the case in Gates versus Bando, the individual investigator could no longer prove that that it was the actual evidence, that it started with a good copy of it, and what his activities that he performed may have altered or changed. And as a result of that, the evidence was thrown out on that. Lastly, you should be aware that the most recent amendments to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure provide an out, or an ability to not have to hire an expert to come in and validate, authenticate evidence if specific activities are taken. And those activities are the fact if you collect or harvest that information in a forensically sound manner, meaning that you use write protection, that you create a hash, that you've created an additional copy, and that copy is the copy that's being used, then you can forego the having to hire an expert to come in and validate and authenticate that evidence. So another reason why you might want to do that. So in summary, we've talked about what a clone is, the fact that it is a special container that contains information from the entire media. That can come from a lot of different sources, whether it's a hard drive like we have in this situation, an external USB flash drive, an external hard drive, maybe a laptop hard drive, or even the ability to get information off of mobile devices such as a cell phone or a tablet. From there. So that's what a clone is. We've talked about why to create that, the preservation, the admissibility, the fact that it's quicker in many cases, the fact that you don't have to go back to the source if later on you discover new facts or a new theory that you want to pursue, and the fact that the deleted information is collected on that. We discussed how that's done, software or hardware write blocker. The creation of a hash is really important on that side of things from the admissibility standpoint. And I've given you some things to consider from a case law standpoint, giving you an example of what to do, what not to do, and then followed it up with the federal rules of civil procedure and some of the information that provides from there. So I hope this has been informative to you. For any of your needs from a digital forensic standpoint, cybersecurity or e-discovery, please reach out to Vestige Digital Investigations. You can reach us on the web at www.vestigeltd.com or call us at 800-314-4357. We look forward to hearing from you.